Well, Canadian Olympians, as well as other athletes, were left on the sidelines during Tuesday's budget announcement from Ottawa, despite a push in recent months by the Canadian Olympic Committee for more resources. Now, for more on this, we're joined by David Shoemaker, CEO and Secretary General of the Canadian Olympic Committee. And thank you very much, David, for joining Bryden and I today.
Yeah, good morning to you both.
I imagine disappointment on what the budget was to you.
Certainly. We've been for some number of years advocating on behalf of 62 national sports organizations for increases in their funding from the federal government. And in the aftermath of Tuesday, certainly there's a sense of collective disappointment, collective frustration among sports leaders in this country. Especially in light of a federal commission was struck almost 2 years ago to look into the sports system. And one of the recommendations that was made just 2 months ago was that there be an urgent addressing of the need for federal funding in Canadian sport.
Hi, David. I'm wondering if you could highlight sort of the ongoing dialogue that your committee undertakes with the federal government. And obviously, Olympics on our Olympic schedule where you've got the summer every 4 years and the winter every 4 years, we don't necessarily understand the ongoing dialogue between the federal government and a committee like yourself. So maybe highlight the importance of sort of a continued partnership even in off years where maybe that would not be something that the public is aware of.
Well, thank you for asking. And we're often in environments where we're clarifying our role and then the role of these 62 national sports organizations. The Canadian Olympic Committee is almost entirely privately funded from 37 marketing partnerships. And that's not what we're talking about. We feel like we're an honest broker in a conversation on behalf of 62 national sports organizations, some very big and, like the likes of Canada Basketball, Canada Soccer, and then some that are very small, Weightlifting Canada or Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton, for example, many of which rely a ton on funding. And so ever since I've been in this role, we've identified the fact that they haven't had a funding increase in 20 years, not since 2005 has there been a increase in their core funding. And therefore, we've engaged in a dialogue with the federal ministers of sport and the Prime Minister himself to try to advocate for this. We have a Minister of Sport, Adam Van Koeverden, a decorated Olympian, somebody who understands the value of sport, and a Prime Minister, somebody that we have great optimism and hope for in terms of his the placement of value in sport. And notwithstanding what happened on Tuesday, we're still optimistic that we'll make the breakthrough that we need to see for sport in this country. It's a nation-building project all unto itself.
And this Prime Minister is very much business-oriented. When you talk to him, is there a way to break down what Olympians and the success of the Olympics for Canada, what it means to the country? I mean, does it attract new business? Does it attract tourism? Do you have numbers for those things?
We have, we have numbers that we for sure do studies when we are hosting games. For example, every dollar that you invest in the hosting of athletic competition returns $7 in economic output. We have all kinds of data as it relates to the investment of sport in terms of creating good and learning environments for young people. 9 out of every 10 women in this C-suite, for example, played sport in their youth. So this isn't just an investment in high performance sport in terms of the Olympians and Paralympians that we put on the world stage, but it's an investment in our grassroots sport, which is becoming increasingly expensive, increasingly inaccessible, because the burden is getting shifted to athletes, both at the grassroots level and in the high performance level in this sport. We know the Prime Minister sees the value in this. He was at the Women's World Cup rugby match in England where he saw Canada take on England. But he also heard the story of the fact that our rugby team had to crowdfund their appearance there to the tune of $1 million. That's not the vision that we have for sport in this country. And I'd like to think that Prime Minister Carney shares that point of view.
David, I'm wondering, and you just touched on it a little bit there, but if you could highlight the perspective of an athlete. A lot of Olympic athletes are, like young adults, university students. They're playing a very competitive sport at a high level, and sometimes the handoff to, your mid-20s, let's say, as an athlete, is a very challenging time because, you're trying to train for the Olympics and stay in a sport which requires an active, constant engagement. At the same time, it's not your full profession. And so obviously the funding is critically important from an athlete's perspective, but maybe you can share a little bit more story on what some of those experiences are like for individual athletes.
Canadian athletes are the best athletes in the world. They defy odds. They do more with less. And it is a full-time job. If you want to achieve worldwide success at the top level in international competition, you have to devote yourself to it. And today, an athlete in Canada that's nationally carded athlete, and there are under 2,000 of them, they earn roughly $2,200 a month, so less than minimum wage. To be able to support themselves. And then what we're increasingly finding is that these athletes are getting to that level. They're being welcomed to the national team to represent this country, to wear the flag on their sleeves and the maple leaf with great pride and great dignity. And then they're being told increasingly that they have to pay team fees in the tens of thousands of dollars to represent Team Canada. We at the Canadian Olympic Committee are doing everything we can do to increase the amount of money that we generate through both marketing partnerships and donors so that we can try to offset some of these challenges, but it's not enough. And we need the federal government to help partner with us. And what we're asking for is $144 million. We've been asking for that sum. It's a modest investment with great return on that investment in these great heroes that we put on the world stage compared to some of the billions of dollars that are invested in the Canadian budget on an annual basis.